Yeah, I
Would be
reckon
good.
that'll do.
Would be good if we can keep it to 45 tonight.
Yeah. All right, I'm just going to play the intro. Alrighty, here we are with Tuesday Night Live again for another round. Always a good week after a Showdown week. So over to you, Pete, to get us fired up and ready to go.
Yeah, thanks, Phoenix, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Crowcast tonight. Of course, we're live, as we are every Tuesday night. So if you want to get online and abuse us or tell us something you want us to put over the air or whatever it is, get online and give us your comments. Always good to hear from everybody. And tonight, joining us, of course, Phoenix, as you just heard, and Dan Oz. How are we tonight, gents?
Very well, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, very, very good. And as you say, always a bounce in the step after we roll a showdown. I was at the game on Saturday afternoon. It was terrific to be there. Fantastic crowd, 51,000, and beautiful day. And it was just a really, really good day to be at the fore.
It was also good to watch it on TV.
I did have a look at it on Sunday morning. I watched the game again, and you could watch it 2 or 3 times over. That's for sure.
Yeah, I reckon I've watched it about 3 or 4 times now.
So, what was the big takeaway from that game? What did we like?
I love the Gov. He was fantastic, I reckon.
Really adds something, doesn't he?
I was worried if we were going to have too tall a forward line with him and Lynch and Walker and Jenkins, but they work well together.
Yeah, and the fact that Jenkins doesn't, I mean, he's tall, but he's kind of a bit of a conundrum. So having that extra tall marking option is not a bad thing up there, I don't reckon.
I guess for me, I went to the game, as I said, and I sat on the third tier of the Western stand, so I had a really and I was sort of right at the front there, and had a really good view looking over the ground, and so I was able to get a fairly good bird's eye view of the game plan and seeing how it all fanned out, and it was really interesting to watch us set up and the way that we set it up from defence and left so much space up the ground and ran in waves from across half back. And I was interested today, Phoenix, to see that graph that you put up from the AFL website, which had the hotspot where most of the game was played. And just across that sort of, a little bit of patch of grass between around about half back, just towards the D50 and in and around there. And it was really interesting to see that's where most of the game was played. And I think that was pretty much on our terms, and we're able to launch from there. It was interesting to watch.
It was quite fascinating, actually, because I think we had something like 181 possessions between centre and the defensive 50 line. So probably about 2/3 of our total possession count was in that little sector of the ground, and only 66 possessions in the forward 50 for 35 odd scoring shots or whatever it was. Fascinating little picture of our game plan. I was trying to find, and I couldn't find any map that showed where we kicked our goals from and where they kicked their goals from. Hopefully something like that surfaces, because I reckon we scored from a lot deeper on average than what they did. I think they were forced to kick their goals from a fair way out.
There certainly wasn't a lot of, to my memory, there wasn't a lot of difficult shots that we had. There wasn't sort of many spectacular goals that to be had. It was very much a case of the forward line was very, very open, a lot of space for our guys to run into. And I think I made the point on Thursday or Friday, one of the things that I was concerned about for Port was that I just thought that they looked a little bit slow on paper, and the way that they push up on that zone, to have guys like Trengove and Carlisle and Homsch, and a very good player, Homsch, don't get me wrong, terrific player. But none of them are fast. And there was always the chance, I thought, that we could get him, but I didn't think it would be to that extent, that's for sure.
What I liked best, I think, of all was that our midfield wasn't dominant.
No, it was a very even spread.
Yeah, and it hasn't been. It hasn't been dominant even through the NAB challenge games. And if you have a look at the statistics, we're very even on clearances, centre breaks, and contested possession. Very even. And obviously they won the inside 50 count as well. So I think that obviously, you first, what you're really trying to do, of course, is win the contest and get the ball going forward. You don't want to deliberately concede territory, and I don't think anybody would be suggesting that we're intentionally trying to get the ball going backwards so that we can start from back there. But what we're trying to do, I guess, is to have a fallback position where if we do lose that contest, and I think that we're not deploying the resources that we were over the last 3 or 4 years, where everything hinged on winning that and everybody getting in and trying to win that contest. We seem, if we lose that contest, then we're content to have the ball sort of around about our half-back area, and then we're pushing our wingmen back. We've got those. I think I made the point through the week. We've got those traditional wingmen in Atkins and Seaman, and they're playing very, very traditional wing roles, and they're pushing right back into defence, and so that we've got a line across there of Seedsman, Smith, Atkins, and I think that Rory Sloane had a roll down there as well. He seemed to do it a number of times where he burst from half back as well and was that outlet, and actually disposed of the ball pretty well on a few occasions. So we seem to have good quality and good numbers back there, and then we run in a wave and of course try and flick past that zone as quick as we can.
Sloaney, the noticeable tweak seemed to be against the Kangaroos. Tex was running up almost to the defensive 50 to get the outlet, whereas against Port Adelaide, that role had been passed to Sloaney, and Tex was playing a little bit forward of centre. He didn't venture past the centre of the ground very often, so that was a very noticeable tweak. The other thing that Nicky and I touched on very briefly at the end on Sunday night was the woeful disposal efficiency of the Port Adelaide midfielders. None of them actually got over 60% disposal efficiency for the game. And we're talking 6 players: Ebert, Sam Gray, Travis Boak,
Robbie
Gray. None of them over 60%,
Wines.
Which was quite without really having taken much notice of it during the game. It would be interesting to see whether that was as a result of our pressure or just their poor disposal. But I want to see our game plan against a methodical team like Hawthorn or Sydney, and see whether the structure holds up, because I don't think Port really challenged it to any great degree.
And yet North Melbourne definitely did challenge it, because I don't think the way we played against North Melbourne was all that greatly different from the way we played against Port. But North Melbourne were...
I think Skipos posted really well today insofar as his view that Richmond play a similar game style to us. I haven't really had a close look at Richmond, to be honest, but happy to take his word from it. He's an excellent poster. And I think that he mentioned that there is a great similarity in the game styles, and that that may present a significant challenge this week as to how we're going to do that, and that may end up being a bit more of a contested game than what it was on Saturday. But I tend to agree. I think that we could probably have a whole separate podcast on where Port Adelaide are at the moment. They are in a world of hurt. I think that they've got significant outs, and as much as it pains me to make any kind of excuse for the old enemy, the reality is that they're missing a lot of players. Boat is nowhere near fit. Saw him trying to run around on Saturday, and he's not fit, and I'm not even sure why he's playing, to be honest, because he kicked a couple of goals, but he's for what he's actually giving to the side, I'm sure that they must lose in the long run in terms of his recovery and recuperation from whatever injury he's got. So he's not fit. They'll miss Wingard this weekend. Hartlett will be out.
Wingard's not even on their injury list. Those heart muscles can...
Big words going around tonight that he'll miss.
Is there? Because I had a look at the AFL injury list updated today, just before we came on, and he's not listed at all.
That one was dropped on radio this afternoon that he won't be playing. So let's, if we assume that's correct, then they've lost Wingard, they've lost Hartlett, Boak's not fit, they've lost White, they've lost
Schultz,
and obviously Ryder and Mumfries. They're suspended, but so they're in a world of hurt, and whilst I think that they'll probably get across, they'll get past Essendon. An absolute no fait accompli for them this weekend.
No, the Bombers will be up and about too.
I'll tell you what, for all the punters out there, if you have a look at the punters thread that I've set up, I reckon the value bet of the weekend has to be Essendon at the line, 51.5 points they're getting, and so I can barely see Port beating it. I mean, I think they probably should beat them, but I can't see them beating them by over 50 points. I reckon that at $1.90, that's a pretty good bet.
Can someone explain to me how Port Adelaide gets 3 weeks in a row at home at the start of the season?
Well, we get that at the end of the season, I think you'll find, and it's because... Don't we?
No, we've got 3 lots during the year of 2 weeks in a row where we're at home. One of those is because of the bye, because Port's not playing, and another one is because of the other showdown. I just think it's a little bit odd that we were okay with that.
Yeah, but how else could you do it?
Give us 3 weeks in a row somewhere as well.
Yeah, I guess so.
Most other teams, all the Victorian teams some of the Victorian teams can have 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 games in a row and they don't even leave Melbourne.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Western Bulldogs don't even get outside until about round 5.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't do badly in the last 4 rounds. We're home 3 out of 4 weeks in the last 4 rounds, so that's not too bad.
Yeah.
Gives us a good run into the finals then.
Yeah. Miller Atkins show makes a good point on the chat too. He mentions that we're a much better kicking team this season, which is something that Pikey mentioned on the couch, was one of their key off-season focuses. And you can notice our disposal is considerably better. And even though we're giving reflex gives often, as we're cutting through the zone, there's enough players running in support there that even if the handball's a little bit off, it doesn't seem to have much of a negative impact. So it's when you actually drill down, it's a far different setup than what it was last year.
What I've noticed most about clearances is that when we're not getting the ball and smacking it forward immediately as we get it, there's a obvious look around to see where the ball needs to go.
Can I just quickly duck back to the issue of the fixture, Dan? We end up with 4 out of the last 5 games at home. That's pretty good.
It's the least they could do for us.
So I guess that's a breakdown of the game plan. I thought it was really interesting, and I thought that little diagram that you posted today, Phoenix, was an extremely useful little bit of information, and it gave us a real insight into how we're playing the game. How do we think that that's going to hold up against the Tigers on Saturday?
Well, I watched Sorry, Danos, you go first.
I think that Richmond has been pretty terrible so far this season. Yeah. They definitely shouldn't have lost to Collingwood. And we've seen what Carlton are like after their game against Sydney. I think that we should rightly go in favourites. But knowing Victoria, we probably won't. And I think that can only benefit us because I think we're the better side and I think we should win.
Well, no one's taking us seriously yet. We got 0 airtime last night on any of the footy shows apart from on the couch. But I watched Richmond and Collingwood bumble their way around the Oval for a couple of hours last Friday night. None of them knew how to win. The skill errors, just the general lack of positive energy from either of those teams. They were hesitant. Neither of them looked like they knew how to win. So Richmond brings anything like that sort of endeavour against us, and we'll smack them. Having said that, it's Richmond, and over there they have had the wood on us, I think, in recent times. So, we're still going to have to be playing at our best. Personally, I don't think they won't get within 5 goals.
I think I was just posting a little while ago that I think if Ivan comes back to the side, it's a massive in for them, even though he probably won't be match fit. I just think that he gives them some spirit and he gives them some drive, and I think that it might sound strange to say this, but it's almost as that he gives them someone to answer to. And I don't see that in Richmond's leadership. I don't see that there's anybody there that, someone intimidating that, that from your own team that you feel like you've got to answer to if you balls up like you did on Friday night. So I think that Ivan is a massive in.
Cochin.
No, that's right. Absolutely not. And Delidio, these guys, just they don't seem to have that kind of presence to me. But I think that Ivan back in the team, I think that gives them a real presence in that way.
I actually think it would be a desperation selection if they pick Ivan. He's been out with a back, so he'll be terribly short of Gallup. And I think they'd be better off running a fit ruckman, even if he's only a second stringer, because bringing Ivan in just to get towed by Sauce, I think it'll actually do them more harm than good. Edwards obviously may come in after a hand injury, but they've still got Delidio out. They just don't look right, Richmond. They look confused.
So we haven't played Richmond at Etihad since it was called Telstra Dome in 2006.
Was that since the basketball game? Wallace?
Richmond 69 defeated Adelaide.
Where'd you go?
66.
Yeah, I reckon that's the basketball game. I was there.
Yeah, that was a game that Wallace played keepings off, and we couldn't do anything about it.
I was at that game.
I think so.
Horrendous. Yeah. Absolutely horrendous.
The 3 games before that, we won by 80 points, 60 points, and 70 points.
Well, that blows me out of the water.
So I think the one after that, they beat us by 3 points, and it wouldn't be surprised me if that's the game that you guys are talking about.
Yeah. And they haven't beaten us over here for a while, have they?
Just trying to switch between Mumble.
Yeah, they won. We beat them here last year, but the 2 years prior to that, they won here.
Okay.
So since then, we've played them in Melbourne 3 times and Tasmania once, and we've beaten them by 50 points, lost by 20 points, and lost by 40 points.
Yeah, that last one was the killer. No, it was the year we played them when Sanderson was coaching us, wasn't it? That was the killer.
That was 2013, round 12, lost by 38 points at the MCG.
Yeah, I reckon I know the one you're thinking of, Phoenix. It was the one. I reckon it was 2014, and it was a cold, miserable night at Adelaide Oval, and we should have won that game. We're in front in the last quarter, and I reckon Dusty Martin was matched up on Ricky Henderson, and Ricky just fell over, and Dusty went and kicked winning goals.
That's right.
Horrible.
Yep.
Another one of those Jack Zeeble type situations, eh?
Yeah.
Sure was.
At least we've got Cole Cheney to fix that for us now.
Tell you what, you'd have Dusty Martin in your team any day of the week, wouldn't you?
Oh, he's an enormous player.
Yeah.
Enormous player.
Don't argue with him, though.
No.
All right, it should be an interesting game on Saturday. I just looking at a bit of news that came through just late in the evening. This evening is the news that one Lachlan Neale from the Fremantle Dockers has put talks on hold.
Yes.
What do we make of that?
Well, the official word is that he wants to wait until at least a third of the way through the season, and that Fremantle's still his first port of call. So playing a nice straight bat at the moment, but I'll tell you what, look, there's no doubt he'll be on the trade table for them to get a big forward, and we've got a couple of forwards.
Yeah, but we don't want to give them any of ours. They can take McCarthy from GWS.
Oh, I don't want to give Lachie Neale to bloody GWS.
No, we'll take.
No, I think
we'll just work out how to. We'll
it'll
give
be a
something
circular
to
trade.
GWS. Yeah,
yeah, it'll be a circular trade, mate. I can't see us giving up any players at this stage, but it'll be something like us sending something to GWS and them sending McCarthy to Freo and Freo sending Lockie to us.
Probably be in the realm of a first round pick, you'd think.
Yeah, well, I mean, Lachie Neale was picked 54 or something, mid-50s, wasn't he? So
don't know about that.
Yeah, he was.
Sure. Third round or fourth round or something. Pretty good money ball there by Freo, if nothing else.
I'll tell you what, we had a few chances to pick him up as well. That was the draft. We picked up Kerridge and then Joyce and then Grigg and then Ellis Yeoman. All the time, Lockie's still sitting there.
Bloody Joyce, that was the one. Anyway, yeah, I noticed that too.
Not one of Rendell's finest drafts, that one.
No, surely someone at the club insisted on Nick Joyce. Seriously.
But anyway, he would be a wonderful pickup. I've pushed that Barrow on the boards, and I think that he will be a terrific pickup. He finds plenty of the ball, gets lots of clearances, and I think that he would be a very, very handy acquisition. And I think, it's all very well to say, look, we want this star midfielder or that star midfielder. You've actually got to get someone that's available and wants to come to your club.
Yeah.
And so if you can get somebody that's actually a ready-made, I mean, he was All Australian squad last year, and people forget that he was All Australian squad. All Australian squad midfielder, and he averages 27 possessions a game, and he's only played 70 games.
Yeah, there's definitely plenty of upside still in Lachie Neale. You imagine him running around with the two crouches. That's a little bit sweet. Yeah,
it's a pretty hard-nosed midfield.
It is. Anyone see Luke Beveridge on Footy Classified last night?
No, didn't see it.
Neither.
Interesting. They had him on, and Caro has asked him a little bit about his views on, yes, I know you hate it, Peter, but the Essendon situation, because obviously they've got Cromeri and Prismal directly involved or impacted by that. And yet another AFL person playing the victim card, saying that the players didn't set out to do anything wrong, and Kaz was treating them the same as they would treat a European cyclist who may have had the benefit of knowing what's involved in the sport from a drug point of view, whereas AFL players have never known. Just made me weep. But the more interesting comment that he made, or section of the interview, was with regards to Michael Talia. They put him on the spot, basically, saying that they treated Tales pretty hard with regards to his exit from the club, and that Luke Beveridge basically didn't speak to him after the Cole Chaney revelations came out. The club basically didn't accept the AFL's findings, and the person that Luke Beveridge feels most sorry for is Cole Chaney. So he wasn't taking a step back with regards to his thoughts on Michael Talia and that whole little thing. Grudgingly said that it didn't change the result, but that's about as far as it went.
I recently spoke to someone who's quite close with the Bulldogs, and they were absolutely certain that Michael shared information with Daniel that shouldn't have been shared. Although he is fairly confident that Adelaide didn't act on that information. So I'm not surprised that Beveridge didn't back down on his stance on Michael Talia.
Beveridge is a pretty interesting cat too. At one stage during that little discussion, Caro made mention of the fact that, because it was Damien Barrett that broke that story apparently, and Barrett had tried to approach Beveridge at one stage to get Beveridge's side, and Beveridge hadn't returned his calls, and they were having a little back and forth, and Barrett said, well, I tried to get hold of you, and Beveridge was basically turned around and said, well, I don't talk to journalists. If you want to talk to me, you go through my manager. I don't return calls of journalists. So he was very forthright in basically smashing Barrett out of the park. So I don't know. He just seems a very intense sort of a single-minded sort of a character.
Yeah, interesting perspective.
Perfect head coach material, in my opinion.
As long as things are going well. As long as he's got player buy-in. As soon as he hasn't got player buy-in, that thing falls apart very quickly.
Well, that'll be interesting to track as it goes forward then.
Yeah.
I think coaches like that have a little bit of a shelf life.
Yeah, well, probably, in some respects, probably not dissimilar to Ken Hinckley, who may find himself under the pump a little bit in the second half of the year if they don't do something.
Yeah, no doubt. Kenny's got his problems, that's for sure. One of the things that I did want to have a chat about tonight was the reserves, and they ended up with a pretty good result after struggling for 3 quarters, and eventually got themselves across the line with some good performances from some senior players. But really interested in the form of Troy Menzel. You sometimes have to be careful that a good SANFL player who gets the best players every week doesn't necessarily make a good AFL player. Troy wasn't in the top 7 players named by the club in the best players, and yet reports were that he played very, very well and did some very, very good things. And so I'm just wondering, did either of you guys see any of the match on Sunday?
No. I've unfortunately got nothing to add on that. All I've got in front of me is the stats, but it doesn't look like he was in the game very much. Only had 16 possessions, so...
Yeah, no, I didn't see it, Pete. I read a little bit of the reviews on the board, so I don't know how... by all reports, everyone was pretty shit until the last quarter. The interesting issue that Nick and I did talk about on Sunday night briefly again, though, was there was reports that we only went through half-hour rotations for the first 3 quarters, so... It seemed to be a deliberate ploy to put more run in the guys' legs, maybe, I'm not sure, or handicap ourselves in some way.
Is there only 60 rotations for the SANFL?
I'm not sure what the number is, but I know that we didn't use we only used half our allocation, or what you'd expect us to use, up until 3/4 time. And then away we went in the last quarter and did it quite comfortably in the end. I heard Riley Knight put in a pretty solid effort. Jared Lyons, again, a very solid effort. The 2 lads up forward looked all right, Deere and Ramsey.
Knight had kicked 4 goals from 19 possessions. Ramsey kicked 4 goals. Riley O'Brien had 43 hit-outs.
Yep.
Guys, sorry, I just had a problem with my Wi-Fi and dropped out there. I've just switched over to normal internet. Did much of my intro there to the SANFL game get on air? And
yeah, mate, we're just carrying on.
Okay, no worries. So anyone see? So I guess I didn't actually hear. Did anyone get a good look at Troy Menzel? Sorry, if you've discussed it, just let it go. Don't worry.
Listen to the replay.
I will. I'll listen to the replay. Don't worry.
What we were saying is that neither of us watched it. The interesting point, Pete, and you might have some perspective, is that we only played only used half of our interchange rotations up until 3/4 time.
Well, I didn't realise that.
Yeah, so that seemed a deliberate ploy to either put some more run in the legs, or I don't know what exactly, but might have explained the last quarter surge.
I'd say it probably would.
I've got a feeling if we can maintain this sort of injury list and keep having 18, 19, 20 AFL listed players playing every week, we're going to destroy the competition this year.
Well,
there's probably going to be huge outrage from everyone who's not the Crows, complaining about how good this was always going to be the problem. They were always going to be too good when they had all their players playing and all this sort of stuff.
Just going back to that interchange, Froggy on the chat was saying that he heard on the SNFL call that at one stage one of the Port players wanted to come off, but the Port staff told him to stay out. So obviously there was an effort by both clubs to manage game time off the bench. But I do agree, Dennis, we've got 2 on our injury list at the moment. It's just insane.
Yeah, and Hampton's only a week or 2 away from returning.
Yeah.
And who's the other one?
Hunter.
Oh, of course, yeah. And he's a first-year player who wasn't going to get any games anyway.
Exactly. So it's an incredible position for the club to be in, touch wood, everyone. There's not many other clubs that I can see that are in a similar boat than we are at the moment. It's a fantastic position to be in.
Probably just leads a little bit of a segue there into selection for this week, which is always an interesting topic for debate. I've been pushing the unchanged line, and I can't see where any change needs to be made. I thought a bit of pressure on my boy the Rat this week, but I think that interestingly enough, that graphic that you showed, Phoenix, where we played very much the opposite side of the ground, and the fact that he was playing a very, very set wing position, I think I'd be very, very surprised if the coaching staff didn't think that he played his role and include him this week.
I don't think there was any obvious passengers, to be honest, from what I could see. McKay had a really good opening half and then picked up again in the last quarter. I don't think Rory Atkins will come under too much pressure yet. You'd have to have a couple of quiet games like that before they started questioning his performance.
And they would know. They would know that he was effectively. I mean, he's there. He and Seedsman patrol those wings, and they're there to assist with transition. And most of the transition that we got was from around about the middle towards right, and so really that brought Smith, Sloan, and Seedsman, largely into play. And there wasn't a lot going through the other side wing.
Yeah, completely agree with that.
His ability to stay poised under pressure and deliver at 100% disposal efficiency. I think he had something like 18 touches and didn't shank one of them. Really impresses me. Really does. To have someone with such poise and skill in that back half. He's the new Matthew Jenshens in terms of being the distributor out of there.
Sorry, who are you talking about?
Rory Atkins.
Yeah, I have to say, I loved his. I reckon it was the second quarter, I think it was, and he took the ball in the back pocket and wasn't an option, but backed himself to dodge him, sidestep around the Port player and just compose himself, and then just hit up that nice target in the middle and set us on our way. He's really matured, and he's a good player.
Bacon is claiming him apparently on the chat, Pete.
Well, yeah, I've got to concede. I've got to concede there, Bacon. I've got to concede him.
How many posies, Dennis?
13.
13, was it? I thought it was more.
So he was
than that,
pretty
actually.
quiet.
Didn't miss
and he
one.
pretty much he had most of them. He had most of them in the second half. He had a very quiet first half.
Yeah.
He had most of his possessions in the second half.
Yeah.
Correct, absolutely correct. Yeah.
And I think that
But the
probably
thing is
coincided too with DMAC played a lot in the middle in the first half, and I think we just changed that up a little bit in the second half too. I think DMAC played more on the wing. So
and he's
there's
not
a bit of...
they're not asking him clearly. I mean, we don't hear it, of course, but just from what we can observe on the ground, he's clearly not being asked to go and chase ball and get himself in positions to rack up numbers. He is, and Seedsman's the same. So, and I mentioned through the week, I'd be very surprised if either of them rack up more than 20 possessions in a game because they're only playing half the ground.
Yeah,
Froggy. I don't think I've ever confused Rackins and Brown, to be honest. But in terms of looking busier, I think he was around the ball a lot without getting an actual possession, which seems to suggest that that he probably had a few pressure acts.
Yep.
So I don't think he'll go. I think he'll stay. I don't. And I guess the other one that comes under consideration, or that by popular demand that seems to come under consideration, is Cheney, which I disagree with. I think he's a good player, and I don't think he'll go. But he's probably the only other one that comes under consideration. But I think that if you've got somebody who's a proven 100-game A grade player that's just had a week off for injury and you need to shoehorn him back in, well, then obviously you do. But I just don't think we're in that situation. I don't think there's anyone apart from, obviously, we'd like to see Knight back, we'd like to see Cameron back, but I'm just not sure how you shoehorn them in at the moment.
No, I don't think there's any need to shoehorn them in either. I think, pressure for spots and all that. I don't think I can't see how Charlie or Riley Knight or Troy Menzel or Jared Lyons, for that matter, squeeze their way in.
Or Mitch Grigg.
I think Mitch Grigg's dropped off. He's back probably with Cam Ellis-Yolman at the moment. Really, in terms of like for like, there's really only a couple of people that come out for Riley Knight. D-Mac's one, and he doesn't deserve to be dropped. You could argue maybe Gov, but he doesn't deserve to be dropped, and they're not really like for like anyway. Miller is growing, and I think he's building every week, so you certainly don't want to probably replace him until he runs out of puff. Injuries are going to be the only way, I think, for those boys to get in.
And we're getting none of those at the moment, for sure.
I think right. It's Miller and McGovern that I think that got their two places.
Absolutely. They've done nothing to make it obvious that they shouldn't be there.
Ryan B on the chat mentioning that Duty's first kick was backwards 40 metres to the goal square, putting everyone under pressure, and that he looked pretty raw and looks to be a long-term prospect. So what our recruiting... Duty.
Oh, okay.
Duday,
that's it. So whatever our recruiting staff have seen in him, it looks like more of a long-term prospect, which is interesting to spend a top 10 draft pick on a long-term prospect. So, I think we might be debating that in years to come. A first-round draft pick.
Thank you.
You have to look at. I guess you have to look at his background, and that was that he really. I mean, we get kids that have. Quite often, we're lucky when we get guys like Miller who have played in the SNFL and played against men. And he's played finals. So it's not probably that unusual to expect that he would come in and be reasonably close to the level. But the next level down, you've got, kids that come from the under 18s and that have, come through the system. And they take a while, generally speaking, to adjust to playing with men. What you've got with Duday, he's another level below again, because he's a kid that didn't even play a full season of under 18s. He came late to the sport, primarily basketball background, and then ended up playing not a full season, I don't think. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he didn't play a full season in the under 18s. And so, he's a real long-term prospect, no doubt.
Which is fine, but do you spend a first round pick on him?
Well, that's the question. That's the question, and so that's a whole another can of worms, I guess, as to the drafting of Tom, and you just have to see how he plays out. I mean, it was only a few months ago that people were sort of saying that Harry Wigg wouldn't survive on the list for another year, and yet look at the way he's blossomed. So you just don't know how they're going to go.
Interestingly, and got a feel for this lad, a lot of people wanted us to pick up Burton in that draft. And I noticed that he did his ACL, or suspected ACL, in a VFL practice match last weekend. So
that's a damn shame.
Shocking news for him.
He's a terrible misfortune there, and he's just had a horror run.
Yeah. So there was talk of us taking the risk, and empathy for the young lad, but it looks like we may have dodged a bullet with him.
Yeah, I think so. But anyway, look, we sit back, and we're in the fortunate position where our team is just humming along nicely, and so we're in a good position where we can afford to take a punt on someone like Duday and just see how he comes along, and give him a year in the SNFL, play, learn to play with men, and give him some time to adjust. And look, you've got to back the recruiters in. They do such a good job, and they've made so many good choices, and so it's very, very difficult to go against them until we can actually see what the final result is.
Yeah, I'm a little less forgiving than you on that one, Pete. I was a bit astounded that we didn't track a midfielder at that spot in the draft, and he didn't seem to be, of all the defenders at that top end of the draft, he didn't seem to be the one that stood out and said, pick me. So, I hope for the lad's sake and for our sake that he develops nicely and turns into a 200-game player, because that's what you want from a first-round pick.
Absolutely.
Yes.
What else have we got, mate? Anyone see Pikey on the couch last night?
Yeah, I did. He was very impressive. He came across very, very well, and we all have read, I assume, and that he, an educated man, a successful man, and does a lot of things outside of football. So he seems a very grounded individual, and just came across in that way. But I tell you what, not since the likes of Simon Goodwin interviews have I seen someone give away less in interviews than what that man does.
Yeah, it was all pretty generic, wasn't it?
He gives nothing.
I think what it did highlight, though, is that he is a very calculated, considered sort of a person. He doesn't look like someone who's going to, sink into histrionics. And he certainly is a man with a plan. So, we've made subtle but significant changes in our structure and our game plan over the summer, and that's not easy to achieve in one off season. So he's obviously able to communicate clearly and deliver quite well as well.
So Phoenix, did you want to read out
Yep.
Sean's post in there?
Yep, just before we leave it for this week, Big Fella has posted, just let me scroll back, that the Crows have a Sunday Fun Day. Kids will get free access to 2 Adelaide games in 2016 as the club launches its own Sunday Fun Day. In a first for Adelaide Oval and the Crows, children will get free tickets to home games against St Kilda and Essendon. So that's an initiative from the club, and there's been a bit of scuttlebutt and debate and trolling about match day experiences and all the rest of it. My own personal point of view is that this is a very proactive thing by the club. Beats the crap out of having the potbellies on the far side and singing a bit of a song. So good on them.
I'm glad you raised that, because that was something I did want to mention. How impressed I was at the complete and utter lack of pre-match entertainment on Saturday. it was just good to get back to not having to sit there and think about what's it going to be, and just get the players out, start the game, and get on with it, and let your football do the talking. And all the the BS that has been going on about this whole pre-match entertainment thing, and I think at one stage Brisbane were talking about having a bloody caged lion, all this rubbish that's going. Just blow the whistle, blow the horn, and start the game, and just get on with it.
So just a bit more information that we've got through from Big Fella. So tickets will be available through Ticketek with junior general admission on offer. The ticket arrangements are free junior general admission with the purchase of any other general admission ticket. And to be eligible for junior general admission, children need to be aged under the age of 15, and applicable only for the June 5 St Kilda game and July 31 other game, which I think was Melbourne.
Sorry, I just had myself on mute there. I'm crapping away to the cat.
I'm wondering what's going on. I'm thinking
Oh, you're breaking up too, Pete. I think that's a sign we should bugger off.
Oh dear.
No.
I think you're done, Pete.
Pete, everything's gone to shit at your end, mate.
An interesting chat there.
Yeah, thanks for that, Pete. We didn't hear a word of it.
Okay, I was just going to say, can you actually hear me now?
Yeah, your Wi-Fi or your internet's just gone. Had a bit of a hissy fit.
Has a couple of times tonight. I was just going to say that was a good evening and brings us probably to the close of the show. It was good chatting, and it was a quick 45 minutes, and always good when the time goes quick. Means it's a bit of an interesting conversation.
Yeah, don't forget we got Scorpus and friends on Thursday night doing the preview for the Richmond game. We've got me and I think it's Nikki again and someone else on Sunday breaking it all down, hopefully another win. And following on from the DMAC interview, we're in the process of organising our next player interview, which may be next Tuesday, but otherwise the following Tuesday. And also a couple of other mystery guests lined up over the coming weeks as well. So stay tuned, watch the boards, and when we do get those interviews lined up, we'll certainly post it so that you've got some advance notice to listen in.
Beautiful. Thanks, Phoenix, and thanks always.
Sorry, just one last thing. Froggy just mentioned on the chat that Burton was cleared. It's just bruising, so that is good news.
Good news. Mate, thanks very much for all the work that you do and all the technical support. We appreciate it, as always.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Danos, thanks for being with us tonight. Always good to have you along, and we'll no doubt catch you on the next episode of Tuesday Night Live. And thanks very much to everyone for listening, and we'll catch you next time on the Tuesday Night Live cast.
Cheers, guys. Have a good night.
See you later.